Welcome. In this video we will look into the economic side of urban forests and urban trees. You will learn about costs, benefits and disbenefits provided by urban forests. The benefits provided by urban forests are related to the ecosystem services the urban forests provide, as seen in a previous video. On the cost side, we can distinguish between ecosystem disservices and installation and management costs related to urban forests and urban trees. The net benefit is the difference between the benefits and the costs provided by urban forests. If and when the benefits exceed the costs, the net benefit is positive and the urban forest is beneficial to the society. When the costs exceed the benefits, the urban forest project is an economic loss to the society. In this case, either the project has to be cancelled, or alternatively, the costs have to be reduced and the benefits have to be strengthened. So let us start with valuing ecosystem services. To be able to calculate the net benefit of an urban forest, we need a monetary valuation of some or all of the ecosystem services provided by the urban forest. There are two problems associated with the monetary valuation of ecosystem services. The first problem is an ethical and philosophical question on the appropriateness of valuing ecosystems and the services they provide from an economic perspective. Can or should we really put a price on nature? It is important to be aware of this debate, but in the course of this lesson we will not go deeper into this discussion here due to time constraints. A second problem related with valuing ecosystem services is that not all ecosystem services can be defined in a monetary way. For example, the spiritual value of a forest or the word of strength in its social cohesion through an urban park is very difficult to express in monetary terms. In this discussion, the ecosystem services valuation pyramid is helping us. This pyramid is nicely illustrating the problem. All ecosystem services can be assessed in the qualitative way, the bottom part of the pyramid. This includes the relative importance of all ecosystem services against each other, as expressed for instance by stakeholders or experts. In the next level, ecosystem services can be quantified. For example, the amount of visitors to an urban forest or the amount of carbon stored in the street trees of a city. Another example is the temperature decrease caused by urban trees. We need good models and good measurements to be able to provide these assessments. This is possible for a lot, but not for all ecosystem services. The top level is the monetary valuation. This assessment can be difficult or impossible for some ecosystem services, but for other ecosystem services it is possible to calculate or assess the monetary value. This can be based, for example, on a market value. It's easy to calculate the value of harvested wood, the value of carbon sequestered, or the value of food production. The monetary value can also be based on the willingness of visitors to pay for the visit, and this value you can measure through surveying the visitors to a forest. Here you see an example of the outcomes of a monetary valuation of ecosystem services for the city of Fond du Lac in Wisconsin in the USA. The city has a canopy cover of 15%, and the value of all public street trees is totaling $1.76 million per year. This is based on a selection of ecosystem services as property value, air quality, energy savings, CO2 emission, and stormwater runoff reduction. This is a very specific calculation for an American city, and the calculation has been done using iTree, a software developed by the United States Forest Service and other partners to calculate the benefits generated by urban trees and urban forests. iTree has been used a lot the last 10 years, both in America and outside America, and since 2 or 3 years also a European version of iTree is available, which can be helpful to calculate ecosystem services provided by urban forests and urban trees in Europe. So we have already introduced the ecosystem disservices before. These are ecosystem-generated functions, processes, and attributes that result in perceived and actual negative impacts on human well-being. And also these disservices come with a cost. Alternatively, an alternative term used when discussing ecosystem disservices from a cost perspective is externality-related costs. Some of these examples of ecosystem disservices are the reduced air quality due to volatile organic compounds emitted by trees, or a reduced capacity for air pollution dispersion in streets with lots of trees, the so-called urban canyoning effect. Some trees also produce pollen, which have a negative effect on people with allergies. Some people perceive reduced aesthetical quality when trees block views. Accidents and injuries or nuisance are caused by fallen leaves, fallen branches, or litter from fruit. Sometimes trees block the sides for the traffic and cause road accidents. And some people perceive fear and stress when they are in places with dense vegetations. Workforce working with trees and forests are seeing safety hazards. And trees and forests can create damage to properties and infrastructure during storms, or trees can cause damage to infrastructure when sewage systems or food spots are impacted by root growing. Finally, we also see green gentrification. This is displacing vulnerable residents due to increased property and rental prices in greening neighborhoods. Tree shade can increase heating demands due to the blocking of the sunlight into the houses. And tree shade can also result in less productive solar panels. So how do the cost of ecosystem services and ecosystem disservices compare? Wu and colleagues from Beijing have been studying how the value of ecosystem services compare to the value of ecosystem disservices in Beijing, China. The ecosystem services studied include decrease in water quantity, medical costs due to allergies and other negative impacts of nature, and damage to infrastructure caused by trees, forests, and their roots. The results indicate that the value of the ecosystem disservices is only very marginal compared to the value of the 5 selected ecosystem services: food production, climate regulation, environmental quality, soil retention, and ecotourism. The study only included few ecosystem services and few ecosystem disservices, but it's clear that we do not have to overestimate the impact of ecosystem disservices on the urban ecosystem and the urban society. A third type of costs are the installation and management costs related to urban forests and urban trees. These costs are directly related to designing, planting, and managing urban forests and urban trees. Costs include planning and selecting proper sites for planting trees and forests and urban green spaces. Acquiring or leasing the land, and in cities this can be very costly. Designing the urban forests, planting the trees, where costs depend on species, size, location, and the needed site preparation. For example, if you have to remove concrete or pavement, then it's much more expensive than if you have an already green space where you can plant trees. Young trees usually have to be watered during the establishment period of the young trees, and this comes with a high cost because of the high frequency of watering. And finally, also trees usually have to be pruned, definitely when it are street trees, or trees that are closer to overhead lines or sidewalks. The trees also have to be checked for insects and diseases, and trees have to be inventoried, and their overall health has to be monitored. Finally, hazardous trees or trees that can cause damage to infrastructure have to be removed. All this comes with a cost for labor, equipment, planning, and so on. So as you see in the pictures here, trees and branches that risk to become dangerous or that have fallen during or after a storm can generate a high costs. Not only the green department who is managing the trees or the forest, but also emergency services like the fire department and the police, or infrastructure managing agencies such as the electricity grid company have to intervene sometimes after damage created by storms. Sometimes tree files are removed as preventative measures when they have been assessed to be potentially dangerous to people, properties or infrastructure, or when the trees or their roots are negatively impacting sewage systems, water pipes, electricity or telecommunication lines. Furthermore, damage caused by the tree root system to the pavement can also be a reason to remove a tree. As you can imagine, removing all large trees comes with a cost. Also to remove the waste residue from the site. Repairing damage to infrastructure can also lead to large expenses. This can include repairing damage after the storm-induced impacts of the trees, but also repairing underground utilities damaged by the tree roots, or repairing sidewalks, as you see on the right-hand picture. Parts of these costs can be avoided by planting the right tree at the right place, including providing sufficient growth space above, but more important, below ground for the tree and its roots. When trees are damaged or cause damage or injuries to properties, infrastructure or persons, legal actions can be taken. This comes with the costs for handling the case and potential payments for compensation. Additionally, claims lead to removing trees as a precautionary measure. For instance, in London, it is estimated that 5 to 10% of the trees that have been cut are due to insurance claims, or are due to avoiding any further claims from insurance or legal cases. One view of reducing the liability of the tree manager is to regularly monitoring and checking the status of the trees in a systematic way. And it's important to keep records of the monitoring so you can prove this in later cases. Finally, the cost for administering the urban forest planning and management has to be taken into account. This includes the cost for municipal staff, cost for equipment, but also overhead costs associated with the management of the urban forest, for example, for procurement processes. There is as well an environmental cost associated with managing the urban forests. Machinery used exhaust carbon, particulate matter, and other types of air pollution. The machinery creates noise, which is a nuisance to people living or working close to the green space. Furthermore, the production of saplings in the nursery and the initial planting generates carbon emissions through transport or the use of machinery. On average, a tree needs to grow up to 30 years before it has sequestered the carbon that was exhausted to grow, plant, and establish the young tree. And in dry climates, irrigation can use high amounts of water, which contradicts water conservation policies in place in these dry climates. Overall, the cost of disservices and of managing and installing trees are less researched, and as such it is less well known than the benefits provided by the urban trees. Data for management and installation costs can be taken from the accounts of urban forest managers, but these are not easily accessible and not standardized along or between different municipalities, for instance. Here we provide one of the few examples which are well documented, an overview of costs and benefits for 5 United States cities. We see that the costs and benefits vary a lot between the different cities. The high costs in Berkeley are mainly related to high costs for infrastructure and cost for liability, as well as high costs for pruning. On the other hand, we see that the benefits in Berkeley are comparatively high. So this means that investing in your trees leads to higher benefits and higher return on investment. This is illustrated by cities as UN and Glendale that show low costs invested in trees, but also low benefits from their trees. These 5 cities spend between $13 and $65 per year per tree, and the benefits created range from $31 to $89 per year per tree. So the net benefit is positive for all 5 cities researched. A more detailed overview gives insight into the average planting, establishment and management costs per year for small, medium and large trees. From this overview, it becomes clear that the annual cost for a large tree is only 1/3 higher than for a small tree. The lifelong cost for one tree ranges between $1,200 and $1,600 US. An important remark is that all these figures and all these costs are based on United States cases. and for public trees, street trees only. Figures for European cases are unfortunately not available in the literature. Now let's look to real forests, planted forests, where we have a Dutch study estimating the average costs for planting new woodlands are between 7,600 euros per hectare and 22,000 euros per hectare. These costs exclude the cost for acquiring the land and the depreciation of the land when planting trees, but it includes costs for saplings, site preparation, game protection, infill of dead trees, and establishment costs. The cost for managing a forest is way lower than for managing individual street trees, with around a cost of 270 euros per year per hectare, averaged over 50 years. Please note that these figures are average costs for rural forests, and in urban forests we expect that these costs will be higher. As more people will visit the forest, so there is a higher density of paths, there is more visitor management needed, more communication, and more intense safety inspections and safety cuttings of branches and trees. Now that we have insights into the costs and benefits of urban forests and urban trees, we can calculate the net benefit of an urban forest. The net benefit is defined as the difference between the costs and the benefits of urban trees. We see here 6 American cities that listed benefits between $48,000 in San Francisco and $100 million in New York. Another indicator for the benefit of urban trees is the benefit to cost ratio. This indicates how much benefits are generated for every dollar invested. This range between 1 to 1 for San Francisco, meaning $1 investment only generates $1 of benefit. But in New York we see a benefit of $5.6 for every dollar invested in trees in New York. Finally, I want to stress the need to give urban trees the space and time to grow old. The older and larger a tree is getting, the higher the amount of benefits they generate. And additionally, the yearly average cost of a tree is decreasing. So the bigger an urban tree gets, the higher the benefit cost ratio is getting. Unfortunately, we see from literature that the average life expectancy of an urban tree is limited to 19 to 20 years old. At that time, the tree isn't fully delivering its benefits and can even not have compensated the carbon which was needed to create the tree, to plant the tree, and for the initial management of the tree. So this concludes the lesson on the socioeconomics of urban forests and urban trees. You have learned about the costs and benefits associated with urban forests and urban trees, and have learned why considering these is important.